Council member, how are you? Council member one.
Hello, Roberto, the king of Woodside.
I don't know about all that, but look, council member, one is good to see you, and I just want to know a little bit more about your announcement, your most recent announcement, which is that you're running for Congress, the seat currently held by Congressmember Velázquez. And first, just tell folks that are watching who you are and obviously what qualifies you to represent them in Congress and in DC. And so I'll let you take the floor now.
Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. My name is Julie One. I'm currently the council member representing the 26th district for the city of New York. I represent Long Island City, Sunnyside, Woodside, and Astoria. I'm a first generation immigrant. I came to this country with my family in 1998, and I have had the honor and privilege of making sure that I was serving during a time of the migrant crisis, where as an immigrant, I would turn anybody away. So when some of my colleagues on every level of government were saying, not in my district of shelters opening, I said, I will take them. You can bring them here. And we've enrolled the highest amount of migrant students into our school district because every child deserves a fair and great public education. We've also made sure that we have welcome migrant dinners with our nonprofit partners and making sure that we have thousands of toys given away every single year for Christmas and backpacks for back to school, working with our community schools to make sure that there was adequate funding so that they have access to eyeglasses and doctors, and making sure that they had a wraparound service where they truly felt welcomed in this country. Because what we're seeing today across the country is not the United States of America that I believe in. It is not why all of our ancestors have dreamt and have come, whether by boat, by flight, or by foot to this country. And I believe that there is no better time to elect an immigrant than now. And my track record within the last 4 years, most of my constituents probably remember me as the Wi-Fi girl. I did not come from politics. I am not from the left or the right or anywhere in between. I come from my community. I come from 10 years of work experience at a tech consulting firm where I've had a wide array of clients, including the federal government for civilian agencies, where I was tasked to modernizing our government to make it work better for all of us, especially when it comes to benefits. So when I was elected in 2021, I ran against, there were at first over 18 people that announced their run, and I think about 16 people made it on the ballot. And without much endorsements or establishment support, we were able to win on the single message that unified all of us at that time, which is that Wi-Fi, internet access, the way that you and I are connecting right now on Zoom, is a necessity, not a luxury, that it should be treated like a utility, like heat and hot water. And within the first 6 months of being elected, every NYCHA resident in my district, from Queensbridge houses, the largest NYCHA in the whole country, to Ravenswood houses and Woodside houses, they got free internet, cable TV. Then we also used a federal program to get unlimited call and text. And through the city program called Big Apple Connect, we were able to make sure within the last 3 years now, we've expanded it citywide where every publicly owned public housing, so every publicly owned NYCHA, now has Big Apple Connect, which is free internet and cable TV. And that's also been renewed, so we have it for another 3 years, and I hope that the new mayor will also continue to support it because it's been one of the most successful programs with 80% adoption rate to make sure that people don't get left behind, especially in a time of crisis like the pandemic.
Councilmember, draw a distinction. So it's currently Assembly Member Claire Valdez and Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. What votes, for example, what will draw the distinction for the average person in terms of the differences and why you and not them? Obviously, three elected officials who one more recently elected, but again, just draw the distinction as to what separates you in terms of your politics, in terms of your ideas, and why you're the most qualified.
I want to make a correction that it's not just three people running for the seat. There's actually
Yes,
12.
correct. Yes, I'm sorry, but those are the ones that I'm familiar with. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Because it's not just you. I think a lot of the news outlets have been talking only about three of us, and I want to make sure that we're not invisibilizing or having erasure of other folks who want to be part of our democracy. because I think the primary process exists to make sure that everyone can run for office and have an opportunity to share their vision and their ideas for this country, especially for the city of New York. So I obviously don't know every single candidate, and everyone has the right to run. And I would say for me, as I started out with, one, first and foremost, in a time like now where the discussion and the issue of ICE and family separation is on top of mind. I'm the only mom running and also the only immigrant that is in this race. And for me, I also come from a different background in private sector in technology. And in addition to that, I would say that within my first 4 years of being in office now, within my first 2 terms, I've passed the highest amount of affordable housing than than the borough of Queens has done in the last 2 decades. And in addition to that, through the One Law and City project, I've been able to pass the highest amount of housing rezoning passed in a single project in New York City history. So I've shown my commitments to our community, especially to those who are underserved and often invisibilized, especially my public housing residents. I've also increased my food distribution funding by 5-fold since I first taken office, because I understand what it's like to grow up on public benefits. I was a public school free lunch kid, and that was actually the catalyst of why I ended up even understanding and recognizing how bad the wealth disparity was, especially when it comes to internet connectivity during COVID. Because I grew up on public school free lunch, that's when it dawned on me, when I was watching the news and de Blasio, the former mayor, said, "Don't worry, if you're a public school free lunch kid, even though our schools are closing, you can come and pick it up." And I immediately had a flashback of me and my brothers sitting at home every time there was a federal holiday. My parents still went to work. My mom worked at a nail salon, my dad worked at odd jobs, and they would just close the door and we weren't allowed to go outside. We watch TV and we eat whatever is in the fridge, even if that means sharing a pack of ramen with extra water or eating a stick of butter pretending like it's ice cream. So I
Mhm.
started doing meal deliveries because I was on the board of a local nonprofit, Queens Together, and also in partnership with Rethink Foods. And I started to do hot meal deliveries for my NYCHA neighbors, and that's when I visibly saw young children who were going to school using Link NYC at a bus stop, and that broke my heart. Where a young girl told me, "Miss, I never turn on my camera and I never go off of mute because I don't want my friends to know how poor I am." And that's not right.
Mm. Councilman, what would you say are the top three needs in terms of your Brooklyn and obviously Queens, which the congressional district wraps around both boroughs? What would you see are the top three things since you announced and obviously began to talk to people? What are the top three concerns that
This
you're hearing?
district, this district, a lot like our city, is incredibly special in that it is more than 50% immigrant or foreign born. So people just like us are either children of immigrants or are immigrants first generation. And for me, I know that I get calls every single day. And I get text messages where I have aunties who are saying, "I'm so scared, I'm leaving work right now because I swear to God, there's a van outside and I believe it's ICE." Or I have calls where they say, "Hey, my nanny has not shown up to work in 3 days and I'm worried about her. I can't get a hold of her." It is spreading into every inch of our lives, whether you understand your privilege of having citizenship or not. And we're seeing firsthand what it means to live in a paramilitarization of our country and to live in complete fear of what happens tomorrow, whether you are white, Black, Latino, or Asian. That we now know that even if you're a US citizen, that they can execute you on the spot if they believe that you're in their way and they're an ICE agent. And that our authoritarian fascist regime believes that they can defend that behavior. And there's complete anonymity where they can wear a hat, sunglasses, and a face mask so that when they shoot and murder somebody without due process or cause, that you may not even be able to identify who did that to your loved one. So I
Mhm.
believe that fighting ICE, abolishing ICE, and ending family separation will continue to be a top of mind. I had a 6-year-old Chinese boy, Yaxin, in Astoria, who was my resident, who was living in a migrant shelter, and he was deported along with his dad. And children have seen it firsthand where the student was taken and detained, and it broke their hearts. So I will continue to fight. I was just at a press conference last week on Friday where 37 of my migrant students were abruptly removed from their school because the migrant shelter or the family shelter was closed down and they were sent elsewhere without even knowing a location of where they were going. So I believe that in the foreseeable future that we need members of Congress who are going to put immigration reform on the top of mind, and those who are not afraid to speak up to say this is not right and we're going to fight for our people, citizen or non-citizen, that everyone has the right to a path to citizenship in this country, especially those who have served their time and those who show up to 26 Federal Plaza. These are not people who are trying to skirt the law. They're trying to do the right thing by filling out all the paperwork, going through the process, showing up to their court date, saying, will you please give me a chance? I cannot go back home to Venezuela. I cannot go back home to Senegal. I cannot go back home to China. I am seeking asylum. And yet we're still deporting them.
Councilmember, any endorsements yet, since you've announced?
So it's only been less than 7 days since my announcement. So we're in a lot of great positive conversations, and we do have three very big endorsements that we have not publicly released yet, but those are coming soon. And we've also been so grateful for the positive feedback from the community and also for the donations that we've received.
Got it. So you've already begun to fundraise and try to compile a war chest for the race. Did you
Yes.
have a conversation with Congressmember Velázquez prior to announcing?
Yes, I've spoken to her once in person at a public event where I said I am considering a run, and of course, I have nothing but respect and love for her. Since her district got redistricted back into Queens after a decade of being mostly in Manhattan and South Brooklyn, I have just been enamored by her courage and her authority and leadership, where you know how hard we fought to protect Astoria from gentrification my first year in office for Innovation Queens. And we came to a place where we broke records of having 45% affordable housing only because the Congresswoman was the first to stand out with us at rallies and organize with us with 200, 300 of our neighbors at City Hall saying this is not enough for us and we need the city to do more and the developers to do more. And I also am so grateful to have served with her the last few years where we were able to work together on Newtown Creek for making sure that we have detoxification of that water source and also working together on various constituent services, especially the immigration issue. We've hosted now two rapid response trainings together to make sure that our neighbors who are citizens who want to stand up for their neighbors, that they're adequately trained. And in addition to that, I've also spoken to her on the phone to let her know that I've continued to deliberate that this is not something that I took lightly, especially as an immigrant myself, a woman, a mother, someone who comes from a working class background. I'm quite frankly, I'm not Dan Goldman. I can't self-fund my campaign. You know, I don't have millions of dollars to blow, which is why it took me longer to make sure that I had support in resources where I could confidently say that within my first quarter that I will raise over $500,000.
Wow, that's a lot of money. So,
Well,
Councilmember, did you have a similar conversation with Assemblymember Valdez? And I only mentioned that because you two, your districts overlap, and there's a lot of shared space there.
yeah, I just want to finish that we actually launched with over $700,000 pledged. We have already gotten a large chunk of that money in, and we're on track to raise beyond that by first quarter. I have not spoken to the assembly member about this race. I've seen her at events and we're friendly, but even prior to her announcement, she did not reach out to me, and we did not have a formal conversation about New York 7. I did, however, speak to Borough President Antonio Reynoso before announcing.
So, next question, this conversation around the DSA, and that, Western Queens is somehow, right, the strongest, or North Brooklyn, depending on who you ask, is the strongest parts in terms of organizing and mobilization for the DSA. What are your thoughts on that? And obviously, how do you plan to push back on that narrative? That this is, again, to your point, a primary where the people will decide? And what do you say to those folks to say it's in the bag for the DSA candidate because they've demonstrated most recently in the assembly, in the story, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll leave that answer to you because you've run a race in the past where you didn't have institutional support and you won vis-a-vis your council seat.
I came out early for Mayor Mamdani and endorsed him during the primary. whereas most of my colleagues in the council waited until the general. And I don't subscribe to labels where I believe that we all have to wear a sign on our heads and we have assigned seating where people only sit there and people only sit over here and you can only sit with us if you're over here. No, this is not the mean girls of middle school for me. For me, it's really important that we work across the aisle. I was the first council member to have 51 council members, including the Republicans, in my tenure to sign on to a single letter to Senator Schumer to say that we need to make sure that the Affordable Connectivity Program for Wi-Fi access for low-income New Yorkers was renewed in funding. So I'm a strong subscriber of the belief that I have to find common interests with all of my colleagues and to move together to achieve the greatest things that we can because all of our citizens deserve better. And that's what I would, that's what I
Councilmember, any conversations with the Queens Democratic Party as of yet in terms of outreach and potential endorsements? Is there an interest on your part? Are you seeking their endorsement? What's your posture currently?
I am not seeking their endorsement, and they've already made their votes to endorse. Uh,
I'm sorry?
they've
You
already
broke up there.
endorsed another candidate.
Okay, got it. So council member, I will let you wrap this up because obviously you have things and places to be in this race. So I just want to leave the floor to you to give us some parting words and anything I forgot to ask you that you want to add that I forgot to ask you maybe that you want to mention.
Thank you so much for having me on. For me, in addition to the immigration issue, I am running on what we call a lifetime of care. That from the moment that you're born until the day that you pass or retire, that you deserve to retire in dignity and to give birth with dignity. Within my own tenure, the first year in office, I gave birth. And then my third year in office, I gave birth. And the second year of my office, I had a miscarriage. And most of the women who go through these processes feel incredibly alone. I struggled with postpartum depression my first year while taking on this very stressful job, but I was grateful to have the care of the nurses, the doulas, the midwives, and my own mother. But not everyone has that luxury of having that wraparound care. So that's why we want at every stage of life, whether you're a pregnant woman, a newborn baby, a a teenager growing up or a young professional to someone who is retired, that you feel at every stage of life that you are valued in this country and your country has your back. Because currently in our current system, if you're too young to work, if you're too old to work, or if you're too sick or disabled to work in the ways that the country deems profitable or productive, then you're kind of left in the dark to fend for yourself. We don't even have paid maternity leave for our new mothers or new parents. We currently don't have adequate social security or retirement for our elders. We want to make sure, especially when I visit my public housing NYCHA residents, they say, Julie, you know, I worked 3 jobs. I've worked at a warehouse, I've worked at a deli, I've worked at a dry cleaners. And even though I worked over 12 hours a day, now that I've retired because my wages were so low and my taxes were low, I only get $200 in my social security per month to survive. Those individuals are going to be left in the dust. And for Black maternal mortality, we've had multiple women who died in my district where I've had to sit down with fathers who wept because they're now widowed with 2 children and their wife died before them after 48 hours of giving birth because the hospital just spits you back out and they say, good luck, take care of yourself. And there's no care. And these ideas aren't radical ideas. We're just catching up to other countries and other states that have done this rightly for their citizens, and we just need to do it right by them instead of spending our funding elsewhere to things that really don't serve us, like the billions of dollars in funding that are going to ICE officers right now.
Thank you, council member, for your time and so being so generous with it. And I wish you the very best. I mean, again, I'm a big believer in run. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise if you feel you're the best person for the job. So, you know, Godspeed to you, and again, to you and your family. Just if this is what you believe in and this is what you want to do, amen to that. So good luck to you. Good luck
Thank
to
you
you.
so much.
All the best. All the best.